Village founder Hiraku Machio awakens from a vivid dream, haunted by memories of his past life, a life marred by betrayal, loneliness, and a terminal illness that ultimately claimed him. He is jolted back to reality and resumes his day, running a peaceful farming village inhabited by demi-humans. But his thoughts keep drifting back to how it all began. In his previous life, Hiraku had endured unimaginable hardships. Betrayed by those he trusted and cursed with a debilitating illness, he lived out his days in sorrow, confined to a hospital bed, until his death. However, upon his death, the god of earth took pity on Hiraku. Aware of the unfairness of his past life, the deity decided to offer him another chance as an apology for his suffering. He wanted to give him a healthy body in his next life, and Hiraku asked to reincarnate as a farmer as he loved watching farming shows in a hospital. The god of earth, in turn, sought the approval of the god of agriculture, who granted Hiraku permission to farm in his next life. To aid him in this new life, the god of earth bestowed upon Hiraku the almighty farming tool. Hiraku awoke in a dense, untamed forest, far removed from civilization. Determined to make the most of his second chance, he quickly began exploring his surroundings. The first thing he did was test the power of the almighty farming tool. To his amazement, it could change into any object or shape he desired, and using it never tired him. With his newfound abilities, Hiraku set about finding water, digging into the ground until he struck a fresh, clean source. Next, he chopped wood to build a small shelter. Although he worked diligently, night fell before he could complete his house. Realizing the need for a fire to keep warm, he hastily dug a hole in a tree and carved out some wooden dishes to use. The following day, Hiraku tested the water he had found, then focused on starting a fire to cook with. As he was chopping wood, he was suddenly attacked by a monster, but he quickly defeated it, and the rabbit meat it provided became his lunch. With food and water secured, Hiraku turned his attention to his crops. Using the almighty farming tool, he tilled the soil, and to his amazement, crops began to sprout immediately, even though he hadn't planted any seeds. Though he wasn't sure what kind of plants would grow, he was thrilled to see life emerging from the earth. However, knowing that wild animals could threaten his crops, he built a shelter to protect them. Despite his precautions, wild rabbits frequently tried to eat his growing vegetables, but Hiraku was able to fend them off. In the days that followed, he survived on rabbit meat and managed to construct a small hut. His simple life took an unexpected turn when two massive, injured wolves appeared. Hiraku, moved by their plight, took the wolves in and fed them meat he had from a wild boar he had killed after it tried to break through his walls. Soon, Hiraku realized that one of the wolves was pregnant. Wanting to help, he brought the wolves into his hut and built a fire to keep them warm through the night. The next day, he was delighted to find that the pregnant wolf had given birth to 4 healthy puppies. Hiraku cared for the wolves, feeding them meat and sharing a shelter with them. The plants in his field matured, producing delicious tomatoes. He named the 2 wolves Yuki and Kuro, and they became his loyal partners, helping him guard the vegetable fields and hunt for food. Hiraku quickly adapted to his new life, discovering that he could grow different types of vegetables simply by imagining them. Each time he used the almighty farming tool, the plants he envisioned would sprout rapidly from the soil. Despite this miraculous ability, Hiraku still faced challenges with cultivation. He had to learn the intricacies of farming through trial and error. To show his gratitude, Hiraku carved statues to honor the gods who had given him this second chance. As he continued to farm and explore, he realized that his meals were quite bland. Over the following days, Hiraku grew fruits and enjoyed playing with his wolves, Yuki and Kuro. With their assistance, he was able to explore deeper into the forest, where he discovered a river. Realizing the potential of the river, Hiraku decided to build a water supply for his settlement. He immediately set to work, constructing an irrigation system that expanded his arable land. As winter approached and the weather grew colder, Hiraku prepared for the harsh season. However, the fur from the wild animals he hunted was too smelly to use for warmth. One day, the wolves brought a surprising visitor to the settlement, a friendly giant spider. The spider offered to weave warm clothing for Hiraku in exchange for a place to live in his tree. Hiraku, impressed by the spider's skills, welcomed it into his settlement and named it Zabuton. When winter finally arrived, Hiraku was well prepared for the cold. However, the long, solitary winter made Hiraku realize just how lonely he was without another person to talk to. As spring arrived, the puppies of his wolves had grown up and ventured into the forest. They returned a few days later with partners of their own. Zabuton also surprised Hiraku by producing offspring. While cultivating the land one day, Hiraku's wolves began to act strangely, leading him into the forest. There, Hiraku encountered a small girl, who was immediately threatened by the wolves. Hiraku intervened, offering the girl his jacket, but she unexpectedly bit him on the neck. To Hiraku's surprise, the girl absorbed his blood and thanked him, growing into an adult woman. However, the wolves, thinking she had attacked Hiraku, lunged at her, causing her to shrink back into a little girl. The girl apologized, and Hiraku quickly understood that she meant no harm. She had been fighting the wolves and used up all her strength, causing her to revert to her smaller form. Hiraku offered her more of his blood, so she could maintain her true form. Grateful, the girl introduced herself as Rue, a vampire and medicinal researcher. Rue explained that she had been hiding in the forest after nobles sent a troublesome person to steal her research. She was amazed by Hiraku's crops, which were unlike anything she had seen before. Hiraku, learning more about the true strength of his wolves and spiders, was pleased when Rue asked if she could stay in his settlement to study his plants. Overjoyed at the prospect of company, Hiraku invited Rue to live with him permanently, expressing his loneliness and desire for companionship. Rue, though initially hesitant because of the dangers that pursued her, but eventually agreed. She misunderstood Hiraku's invitation as a proposal for marriage and asked if he truly wanted her as his wife. Realizing the misunderstanding, Hiraku didn't hesitate. He asked her to marry him for real. Rue accepted, and the two began their life together. With Rue by his side, Hiraku's life improved significantly. Rue's magical abilities allowed her to create light, making the long nights less lonely. She also taught Hiraku where to find salt, greatly enhancing the flavor of his meals. Together, they continued to expand the settlement, planting new crops and enjoying each other's company. One day, Hiraku's alarm suddenly went off. Rushing to the source, he discovered his pets attacking an unfamiliar woman. Hiraku freed her. As Hiraku helped her to her feet, Rue attempted to sneak away, fearing the woman's intentions. However, the stranger introduced herself as Tia, an angel, and was surprised to learn that Hiraku was Rue's husband. Tia then revealed that Rue had a bounty on her head, stemming from an incident where Rue destroyed a town. Rue defended her actions, explaining that she was justified because a noble had imprisoned her there. Tia had been pursuing Rue, which led Rue to flee into the Death Forest. Despite their past, Rue invited Tia to stay in the village, hoping to mend their relationship. Curious about the village, Tia accepted the invitation and was soon introduced to the fields and the other residents. When Tia first encountered Zabuton, the giant spider, she fainted out of fear. Upon regaining consciousness, Hiraku and Rue showed her the various crops they had grown. Tia tasted a salad seasoned with salt that Hiraku prepared, marveling at the simple yet delicious flavor. The day was spent harvesting vegetables, and in the evening, Rue asked Tia if she had enjoyed her time in the village. Feeling welcomed, Tia agreed to stay and help expand the settlement. One day, while passing the wolf house, Hiraku noticed that Yuki and Kuro's family had grown again with the birth of new puppies. Excited by the expansion of his wolf family, Hiraku decided to build a larger house for them and began thinking of names for the new puppies. Around the same time, some of Zabuton's children bid farewell to Hiraku, venturing out on their own. Soon after, Tia announced that she needed to leave the village temporarily to take care of some errands. A few days later, she returned with a group of high elves, all introducing themselves with a family named Leah. Tia explained that their village had been destroyed in a war, leaving them homeless. Hiraku, seeing no problem with them staying, warmly invited the high elves to settle in his village. As Hiraku introduced the elves to Zabuton and the Inferno wolves, the elves fainted from fear, realizing that Hiraku's pets were actually dangerous monsters. Once they recovered, the elves joined in building new houses and toilets. They were particularly impressed by Hiraku's strength as he chopped down trees with ease using the almighty farming tool. When their house was completed, Hiraku couldn't help but feel a bit envious. It was much nicer than his own small hut. As the high elves settled in, Hiraku realized that much of what he knew about elves from his previous life was wrong. Contrary to his assumptions, they were not vegetarians and possessed impressive blacksmithing skills. In the following days, Hiraku built a furnace, and the elves crafted cooking pots, which delighted Hiraku. Grateful for their new home, the elves thanked Hiraku, expressing their happiness at finding a place to call their own. They mentioned that they could now focus on building their future, even hinting at starting family. As he prepared to plant more fields, a troubling thought crossed his mind. who owned the land his village was built on. Ru informed him that, technically, the land belonged to the demon lord. However, she reassured Hiraku that since he had built everything himself, he was now the rightful owner of the land. In the evenings, the women of the village often gathered together, chatting and admiring Hiraku's abilities. As the days passed, Zabuton, the giant spider, caught a giant queen bee and suggested that Hiraku keep her as a pet. Hiraku, seeing potential in having honey, built a small house as a home for the queen bee, eagerly anticipating the sweet reward. Hiraku wanted to build a water reservoir and, with the help of an elf, figured out a way to transport water from the river to the village. Using the excavated earth, Hiraku created a waterway. The high elves, who were diligent and hardworking, assisted in the construction, and soon the village had a reliable water source. This allowed Hiraku to easily water his fruits and vegetables, and to his delight, fresh fish were also washed up in the process. Curious about the fish, Hiraku decided to grill them. The others in the village were initially apprehensive. These fish were considered dangerous, and no one had ever imagined they could taste good. Despite their hesitation, Hiraku tasted the dish first and found it delicious. His wife, Ru, and friend, Tia, followed suit and enjoyed the fish as well. Seeing their approval, the elves eventually tried the fish. In the following days, Hiraku decided to plant rice, an idea that intrigued the villagers. He built a paddy field and filled it with water, which puzzled everyone. They initially thought he was trying to raise more fish. Hiraku patiently explained how to plant rice, and when the time came to harvest, the elves eagerly helped him. After drying and processing the rice, Hiraku cooked it in a pot and made rice balls. The women were amazed by how delicious they tasted, and the rice balls quickly became a hit, leaving nothing left for Hiraku. Hiraku decided to build a bathhouse. However, he realized he needed a way to dispose of the sewage properly. Tia introduced Hiraku to cute, harmless slimes that could clean the dirt. Hiraku used them as filters to recycle the water, making the bathhouse sustainable and eco-friendly. As the bathhouse was completed, when it was ready, Hiraku had to teach the girls how to behave in the bathhouse. However, when Hiraku finally relaxed in the tub, all the women joined him, causing him to become shy. The next morning, Hiraku's edible mushrooms had grown successfully. Meanwhile, the Inferno Wolves brought back 5 more elves they had found in the forest. Their names all started with Law, and they were welcomed into the village. The story shifted to Kuro's past. Before meeting Hiraku, Kuro lived alone, defeated in every battle until he encountered Yuki. She instantly overpowered him, and Kuro fell in love with her. One day, Yuki became pregnant. However, they were attacked by a powerful bear, leaving both Kuro and Yuki injured and too weak to hunt for food. In their weakened state, they encountered Hiraku. At first, they thought he was just a weak human, but after seeing him effortlessly defeat a wild boar and offer them food, they realized his strength. Hiraku's kindness and strength convinced Kuro and Yuki to stay with him. And as time passed, more and more powerful women joined the village. Kuro began to suspect that Hiraku was not just an average human. Despite this, Kuro enjoyed his time with Hiraku. At everyone else's insistence, Hiraku's house is rebuilt even larger with single bedrooms for himself, Ru, and Tia, and a communal dining room for everyone to share. Hiraku wisely ignores the secret double bed hidden behind a locked door. His new, larger home has a great view of the village's giant tree. He is happy about the construction of the high elves, and he even added statues of Kuro and Yuki outside. The next day, he wanted to cook curry, a dish that required a variety of spices, so he showed Ru and Tia the new plants he had ready to harvest. Using his almighty farming tool, Hiraku planted and harvested an assortment of spices. Ru and Tia used their magic to dry the spices, turning them into perfect ingredients for cooking. However, when Hiraku showed the wolves coriander, they fled from the strong smell, much to Tia's amusement. She found it intriguing that the powerful Inferno Wolves had such a strong aversion to the herb. With all the spices in hand, Hiraku began preparing the curry, and Leah, one of the high elves, offered to help. Under Hiraku's guidance, Leah learned the steps to cook the meal. As they neared the final steps, Hiraku realized that naan bread would be the perfect complement to the curry. He quickly prepared the dough, and Leah rolled it out, with more and more people gathering to watch the process. When the naan was finally baked and the curry was served, Hiraku showed everyone how to enjoy it, dipping the warm bread into the rich, flavorful sauce. The villagers were delighted by the taste, and the dish was quickly devoured, leaving Hiraku happy and satisfied with their smiles. With winter approaching again, Hiraku prepared by gathering firewood and collecting blankets from Zabuton. Tia and Ru used their magic to preserve meat, ensuring that the Inferno wolves would have enough food even when hunting became difficult in the snow. Meanwhile, Hiraku worked on preserving vegetables, determined to contribute as much as he could despite his lack of magic. Feeling a bit inadequate, Hiraku expressed his concerns to Leah, who reassured him, telling him that he was special even without magic. As winter settled in and everyone was confined indoors, Hiraku introduced board games to keep everyone entertained. He explained the rules, and soon the villagers were eagerly playing. Ru, known for her competitive streak, almost lost a game against Tia, but, in a fit of frustration, knocked over the entire board. Tia, not one to back down, used her magic to reset the board and challenge Ru again. The games became a regular part of their routine. Hiraku remarked on how smart his wolves were, especially when Kuro beat Ru in a game of chess. Later, they played mahjong, and Hiraku thought he was on the verge of winning, only to be defeated once again by Kuro. As the days passed, Hiraku created more games, including bowling. However, to his surprise, the women outplayed him. Despite his losses, Hiraku enjoyed the winter. Winter eventually passed, and the village began preparing for the new planting season. But just as they were ready to start, Zabuton suddenly sounded the alarm. A giant wyvern was approaching the farm. The creature let out a deafening roar and unleashed a devastating breath of fire upon the village. But Hiraku was determined to protect everyone. He used his almighty farming tool to shape a strong spear and immediately launched an attack on the wyvern. The beast countered with a powerful barrier, but Hiraku's spear pierced through, injuring the wyvern's wing. Hiraku pressed on, delivering another blow that ultimately defeated the mighty wyvern. Afterward, Hiraku sought out the wyvern's body in the forest. Ru explained that wyverns were rare and their appearance was unusual. Hiraku, however, couldn't shake the feeling that the creature might have been sent to attack them deliberately. Hiraku wants to eat it and prepared a delicious wyvern steak with an array of side dishes, and everyone gathered to enjoy the rare meat. During the meal, Ru asked Tia if she could withstand one of Hiraku's spear attacks, but Tia admitted that she couldn't. The weapon was too overpowered. Meanwhile, in the Demon Palace, the demon General Beazle reported the defeat of the wyvern to the other generals, who were shocked that such a powerful creature had been taken down by unknown persons. In his cave, the Dragon King Drime also observed the battle, and his assistant commented that even Drime would not survive an attack from Hiraku's spear. The next morning, Hiraku decided to make alcohol, much to the delight of the elves. They harvested grapes, and Hiraku built a device to process them. The girls began stomping the grapes, but when Tia stumbled, they decided to stomp in rhythm, turning the process into a joyful event. The elves sang as they worked, and soon everyone, including Hiraku, joined in. By evening, they had filled many barrels with the crushed grapes. Meanwhile, in the divine realm, God was being scolded by his daughter, the goddess of agriculture. She revealed that the farming tool he had given Hiraku was actually a replica of Grime, the god spear. Hiraku had only survived using it because God had coincidentally granted him a supernaturally healthy body. Without it, the weapon would have drained all of his life energy. The next day, Zabuton and the Inferno wolves caught another vampire in the forest, who turned out to be Ru's sister, Flora. When she arrived in the village and learned that Hiraku was Ru's husband, she was initially incredulous, thinking that Hiraku was just a weak human. However, Kuro quickly put her in her place, threatening her for disrespecting Hiraku. Flora apologized, and Hiraku learned more about the true nature of his wolves. In the evening, Flora discovered Hiraku's delicious food and began to appreciate life in the village. She returned a month later, this time with an army of maids led by an ogre, and they brought cows with them. Not wanting Tia to feel left out, she also recruited reinforcements and returned to the village with 3 angel guardians and a group of lizard men who brought chickens. With the arrival of the maids, the household tasks in the village were quickly taken care of, but Hiraku noticed that their food was bland. He taught them how to cook more flavorful dishes, and the maids, eager to improve, quickly mastered the new recipes. As Hiraku looked around the village, he realized how much it had grown since the beginning. One day, an elf informed him that another group of elves had arrived. 30 more, all with plans to start families. Hiraku began to worry about the absence of other men in the village. To accommodate the growing population, the farm expanded, and Hiraku decided to rename it the Great Tree Village. To celebrate the village's expansion and new name, Hiraku organized a grand feast. During the festivities, the villagers unanimously declared Hiraku as the village mayor. In the days following the official establishment of the village, an angel rushed in to report that Demon General Bezel had arrived at the village. Bezel introduced himself formally, and Hiraku quickly recalled that their village was built on the Demon Lord's land. Aware of the need to maintain good relations with the Demon Lord, Hiraku expressed his willingness to pay taxes. Rather than offering currency, Hiraku suggested that they could pay a portion of their annual harvest as a tax. Bezel accepted Hiraku's offer of 10% of the harvest, but his acceptance was driven by a deeper fear. When Bezel returned to the Demon Palace, he reported to Generals Gratz and Randon that he had only accepted 10% because of the formidable forces protecting Hiraku's village. Vampire Princess Rue, Angel of Annihilation Tia, an army of elves, angels, and lizardmen, a pack of inferno wolves, and a greater demon spider. The girls in the village were impressed by Hiraku's negotiation skills and praised him for securing such a favorable deal. Rue was especially delighted with a potion bottle given to her. The next day, the giant dragon Drime appeared, bringing a sword as a gift for Hiraku. Drime's servant explained that they were neighbors to Hiraku's village. Hiraku welcomed Drime into the village, and the dragon transformed into a human form. Hiraku introduced him to the village's wine, which Drime enjoyed a bit too much, getting drunk in the process. Despite wanting to stay longer, Drime was eventually dragged back home by his servant. Hiraku realizes as mayor the need to cultivate diplomatic relationships. So Tia suggests to Hiraku that the elves would prefer to build a house for people since most of the visitors visiting in large groups. Hiraku also took the opportunity to educate the villagers on the difference between guests and unwelcome intruders. The elves, in response, created a new bell with a different sound to signal visitors, thanks to Zabuton's design. Hiraku also formed a welcoming team for new visitors and asked Flora to help with nighttime security. The village's next visitors were beastmen from Howling Village, led by a miner and hunter named Garf. They wanted to establish a relationship with Hiraku's village. Rue welcomed them, but quickly noted that they were not being entirely honest. She detected another group hiding nearby. The Inferno Wolves swiftly captured the second group. Garf apologized and promised not to deceive them again. When Hiraku offered to serve them delicious food, Tia reminded him that Garf hadn't brought a gift, and she was unsure if they were trustworthy, given that they had hidden another group. Made and also opposed serving them good food. Despite their reservations, Hiraku felt bad for the visitors and wanted to extend hospitality. He learned that the beastmen earned their livelihood through hunting and mining and had previously traded with another human village before running into problems. Seeking a new trading partner, they had discovered the Great Tree Village and were glad to have met Hiraku, who offered them a meal. Tia later learned that the beastmen had split into two groups, with the second group meant to call for help if something went wrong with the first. They discussed possible trade solutions since the beastmen didn't have any currency. Garf proposed trading silver, iron, and glass in exchange for food crops. Hiraku suggested using his wolves to transport goods between their villages. Garf apologized for not bringing a gift, explaining that they were unaware of the customs, but promised to bring one next time. A few days later, the Great Tree Village was ready to make its first trade with Howling Village. Hiraku sent Tia and a group of lizardmen to facilitate the exchange. In return for wine, Drime agreed to ferry trade goods between the two villages. Though the beastmen were initially fearful of Tia and the lizardmen, she managed to gain their trust. Tia then mentioned that Howling Village wanted to send some of their people to live in the Great Tree Village. Hiraku, concerned about the lack of men in the village, insisted that they also send men. However, when the men arrived, they turned out to be boys too young to marry anyone for at least 10 years. The female beastmen were nervous, but Hiraku gained their trust and reassured them. When he met the little beastmen boys, Hiraku realized that Howling Village had misunderstood his request, as Senna and the other beastmen acclimated to life in the village. However, despite their growing comfort, they still hadn't gotten over their fear of Zabuton, the giant demon spider, and the Inferno Wolves led by Kuro. Hiraku soon noticed that Senna could use magic, just like the other villagers who were using their abilities to cultivate plants. It became clear to him that everyone in the village, including the pets, could use powerful magic. This realization left Hiraku feeling jealous and depressed, as he was the only one in the village who couldn't use magic. Senna, noticing Hiraku's mood, tried to cheer him up by pointing out that the little beastmen boys also couldn't use magic yet. One day, while Hiraku was harvesting apples, a sudden earthquake shook the village, signaling the presence of dangerous monsters. Rushing to the scene, Hiraku found a grappling bear and a bloody viper engaged in a fierce battle. Without hesitation, Hiraku used his almighty farming tool to defeat both huge monsters. To celebrate the victory, Hiraku used the monster's meat to cook another feast for the village. The girls were a bit saddened that their precious wine was used in the cooking, but they couldn't deny how delicious Hiraku's snake dish turned out, perfectly complementing the meal. Later, Hiraku approached Flora to ask for some medicine. She showed him various healing potions, and Hiraku thanked her for her help. During their conversation, Hiraku learned that their miso production wasn't going as smoothly as planned. He encouraged Flora not to give up, and the next day, he collected chicken eggs and mixed various ingredients to show Flora how to make mayonnaise. The cooking lesson continued, with Flora learning how to properly prepare miso and even managed to make coffee with Hiraku's guidance. As they were finishing up, Hiraku was informed that they had new visitors, a group of dwarves led by Donovan. The dwarves wanted some wine, but didn't have any money to trade, so Donovan offered their distillation technology instead. This exchange led to the dwarves creating various types of alcohol, including a strong corn whiskey that surprised Hiraku with its potency. Impressed, the dwarves decided to move into Hiraku's village, and Hiraku threw a welcome party for both the beastmen and the dwarves. Drime loved Donovan's new liquor and quickly got drunk on it. During the festivities, Hiraku hoped that the dwarves might be potential marriage candidates for the village's women. However, he soon learned that the dwarves were only attracted to women with beards. Later, another dragon appeared in the sky. Hiraku prepared to slay the dragon. However, before he could act, Drime attacked the dragon, and then another dragon appeared. Hiraku charged with his lance and just missed the target. He prepared to attack again, nearly killing one of the dragons until Gucci, Drime's butler, frantically revealed that the dragons were Drime's daughter Lastismun and wife Grafalun. Hiraku learned that Drime had caused problems by sneaking away from home at night to party in Hiraku's village, leading his family to believe he was cheating on his wife. Drime was thoroughly scolded by his daughter and wife for his behavior. Later, Grafalun and Lastismun apologized for the misunderstanding, with Grafalun recognizing how dangerous Hiraku was. Lastismun also realized that without the protection of the demon spider, she would have likely died from Hiraku's attack. To avoid further conflicts and to strengthen diplomatic ties, Grafalun asked Lastismun to stay in the village as a diplomat. Following this arrangement, Lasti was taken into the village, and Hiraku showed her the various chores and responsibilities that came with village life. However, he quickly discovered that Lasti was overpowered and often unintentionally destroyed things. Eventually, Hiraku assigned Lastismun the responsibility of managing all diplomatic relations for the village. This decision quickly reached the ears of Demon General Beazle, who was on a produce procurement mission. Beazle was shocked to learn that a dragon girl now resided in Hiraku's village and was terrified of her potential power. Despite his fear, Beazle decided to buy all the fruit available, not wanting to risk angering anyone. When Beazle returned to the demon generals, he reported the presence of Lastismun, leading to another decision by the demon leaders. He decided to send Beazle's daughter, Florem, to Hiraku's village to investigate the fighting power of the village. Upon arriving, Florem was received by Lastismun and was shocked to observe the village's army, realizing that it was powerful enough to pose a significant threat to the demon army. As she took notes on the village's capabilities, Florem still needed to figure out who the village mayor was. When she encountered Hiraku, she initially dismissed him as a normal human and ignored him. However, Florem later learned from Lastismun that Hiraku, the commander of the village, was the same human who nearly killed Grafalun. This revelation left Florem in awe of Hiraku's strength. Despite her initial nervousness around Hiraku, Florem decided to extend her stay in the village. One day, a small slime ended up drinking a whole barrel of wine. The girls were furious and wanted to punish the little creature. Just as they were about to do so, Florem intervened. She stopped the girls from punishing the slime, and instead, the little slime was acquitted of any wrongdoing. Hiraku, after finishing his work in the fields, joined the girls for lunch. They had prepared a delicious vegetable hot pot, but Hiraku mentioned that he would love to have seafood, reminiscing about his favorite dish, chunko. Hearing this, Rue and her little sister Flora decided to gather information. Girls decided to visit a fish merchant in a nearby town within the demon territory. 3 days later, their group returned to the village accompanied by a manager from the Garun company. Michael, recognizing the potential in doing business with the village, showed Hiraku the various fish his company could provide. Impressed by the quality of the seafood, Hiraku agreed to establish a business relationship with Michael. Michael was eager to become the official government purveyor for Great Tree Village, offering to sell their fruits and vegetables to the outside world. Rue mentioned that there was a high demand for their goods, and Michael showed the villagers a list of his products. However, during the negotiations, Lastismun, who had accompanied the girls, intimidated Michael, especially when he suggested selling their alcohol. Despite the scare, Michael was excited about the future business opportunities. As Michael journeyed back to his office, he reflected on his visit. He recalled a flashback to when Florem and Lastismun first visited him in the city of Shadu. Initially, he was busy and wanted to send them away, but his intuition told him he would regret it. Upon meeting them, he was immediately struck by their powerful presence, especially recognizing Lastismun as the crazy dragon known for her strength. Realizing the importance of their goods and the connection to Hiraku's village, Michael quickly agreed to trade with them. Despite his fear of the Forest of Death, where Hiraku's village was located, he personally delivered the seafood and was relieved to find that Hiraku was a reasonable and kind person. Back in the present, Michael couldn't believe how lucky he was to have secured such a lucrative deal. After that, Hiraku and the villagers enjoyed a great seafood chunko, much to Hiraku's delight. However, the next day, another dragon appeared in the village. Hiraku wondered if this dragon was also related to Drime. To his surprise, the dragon suddenly attacked the village, challenging Hiraku to a fight. Hiraku, ever the protector of his village, fought back using his almighty farming tool and managed to capture the dragon. He discovered that the dragon was Hakurin, Drime's immature older sister. Hiraku, frustrated by the damage she had caused, demanded to know why she had attacked the village. Just then, Drime appeared, apologizing profusely for his sister's behavior. It was revealed that Hakurin was curious about her niece's potential future husband, as Drime had drunkenly boasted that Lastismun might marry Hiraku one day. Jealous and single herself, Hakurin had decided to check out the situation for herself. Hiraku forced Hakurin to repair the damage she had caused in the village. While staying in the village, Hakurin discovered the villagers' board games, and she convinced Hiraku to play strip mahjong with her. Unfortunately for Hiraku, the dragons were exceptionally skilled at the game, and soon he was down to his boxers, nearly losing all his clothes. Despite his best efforts, Hiraku ended up losing, much to the amusement of the ladies in the village. Bezel learns of Hakurin's presence in the village, causing his co-worker General Randon to forward his resignation letter in fear. Demon Lord Galgardo is more concerned his daughter Yuri is going through teenage rebellion. Hakurin, trying to settle into village life, initially attempted to become a layabout, but after being punished by Hiraku multiple times, she finally found her place as the village schoolteacher. Around this time, Hiraku discovered that some inferno wolf puppies had raided a dungeon belonging to Lamia ladies. Feeling responsible, Hiraku went to apologize to them, which led to the Lamias starting to trade their dungeon treasures for crops from the village. This trade eventually led to the formation of a delivery service, connecting all the trading villages. Meanwhile, Yuri, convinced that Florem was being held captive by Hiraku, began planning an invasion of the Great Tree Village. Florem, busy with paperwork, was surprised by a visit from her father, Bezel. He reported that Princess Yuri was raising an army in preparation for an attack on the village. Florem learns of Yuri's misguided intentions to attack the village. It turned out that Yuri had been misled by 3 ambitious but somewhat foolish demon nobles. Despite Bezel's efforts to stop the attack, the demon lord couldn't sway his daughter's determination. Realizing that direct confrontation wouldn't work, Florem devised a plan to ensure that Yuri's army would be defeated without anyone getting hurt. The next day, when the demon army attempted to invade Hiraku's village, they were immediately intimidated by the powerful Lamia girls guarding the village. The soldiers, along with the 3 noble daughters, were quickly overpowered and surrendered in fear. As punishment for their foolishness, Florem decided to move Yuri and the trio of nobles into the village to work as atonement for their actions. For political reasons, she kept the details of their attempted invasion hidden from Hiraku. When Hiraku asked about Yuri, Florem explained that she was a friend who had been worried about her sudden disappearance from the demon palace. As Florem showed Yuri around the village, Yuri was fascinated by the water mills and the peaceful life there. She even played with the young Beastman boys, finding them adorable. Later, when they visited the apple trees, Tia remarked that the 3 noble girls were behaving like typical nobles, thinking that taking over the village would make them rich. This comment angered Florem, who reminded them of their place. In the afternoon, they met Lastisma and Lasti, whom Yuri thought was a very cute girl. Despite their attempts to escape, The trio of nobles was always foiled by the inferno wolves and demon spiders. Over time, the idiots grudgingly helped Florem with the village's financial paperwork, becoming known as the Town Hall Trio. As Yuri spent more time in the village, she came to appreciate its beauty and the kindness, and felt ashamed of her initial intentions to attack such a wonderful place. At dinner, Hiraku noticed Rue was having difficulty controlling her magic. When he expressed concern, Rue reassured him that it was nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, Yuri prepared to return home. The Beastman boys were sad to see her go, and Senna even gave Yuri a gift of apples. However, the trio of nobles decided to stay in the village, preferring its peaceful life over the politics of the demon court. Yuri teleported back to the demon palace with Beazle. As the winter months passed, Hiraku and the villagers harvested a large number of vegetables, and Lasti wanted to send some to her parents. Hakurin, Drime's older sister, also wanted to give her parents some of the village's produce. On her way to deliver the vegetables, Lasti helped Michael, the merchant, fight off a fish monster and brought its meat back to Hiraku, who used it to prepare a hot pot for the village. Hakurin, too, delivered vegetables to her parents and returned with 5 mountain elves led by a skilled craftswoman named Ya. Seeing that Hiraku lacked pottery skills, offered to help. Using her fire magic, she began crafting pottery goods for the village. Meanwhile, Tia's elves discovered a new dungeon, which excited the Inferno wolves, who were eager to explore it. One evening, Hiraku was enjoying a bath in a newly built men's bathhouse. Outside, the 3 noble girls plotted to watch Hiraku take a bath, wanting to see him naked. However, their plans were quickly thwarted by Florem. Later that evening, the elves returned from their dungeon exploration and reported encountering a bloody viper inside. The elves were excited at the prospect of hunting the viper, as its meat was rumored to increase their chances of pregnancy. As winter deepened, Rue, Hiraku's wife, fell ill and became bedridden. Concerned, Senna noticed that Rue was craving sour foods and began to suspect that Rue might be pregnant with Hiraku's baby. As Rue's pregnancy progresses, Hiraku finds himself constantly worried about her well-being. Yet he's also filled with anticipation and excitement about the arrival of their child. One morning, Hiraku notices that maids always woke up earlier than he did, despite his attempts to rise early. Concerned for their well-being, he decided to sleep in longer. During breakfast, Hiraku learned that Flora hadn't slept well due to a failed experiment. Hiraku spent time planting beautiful flowers around the village. He also made toys for the children and crafted wooden swords for the maids and lizard men, who had become obsessed with working out. The girls were determined to stay fit to keep wearing their cute maid dresses, and their dedication inspired Hiraku to join in on the workouts. However, he quickly found himself exhausted as Hiraku used his almighty farming tool to effortlessly destroy a tree trunk. Hiraku then received a letter from Demon Princess Yuri, expressing her love for the fashionable clothes that Zabuton had created. Hiraku took a relaxing bath in the men's bathhouse, appreciating the privacy it provided. However, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, only to realize that the elves were keeping an eye on him out of concern for his safety. Despite the slight awkwardness, Hiraku was grateful for their care and felt blessed for his second chance at life with such wonderful friends. The next morning, Hiraku decided to visit the dwarves, who were busy brewing alcohol. As always, he was impressed with Donovan's home-brewed liquor. Donovan expressed a desire to plant more grapes, prompting Hiraku to devise a plan to expand their vineyard. Senna appeared, alarmed by the presence of a strange man in the village. Hiraku was startled to learn that an unknown man had managed to sneak into their well-guarded village unnoticed. The mysterious visitor turned out to be Vargreif, the vampire progenitor and the 4,000-year-old grandfather of Rue and Flora. Vargreif congratulated Rue on her pregnancy, a rare occurrence for vampires, who usually have children by transforming humans into vampires. Vargreif then noticed the statue Hiraku had carved of the god who had reincarnated him. Vargreif revealed that he had also met this god once before being born as a vampire. However, due to his eternal lifespan, he erases his memories every few centuries to maintain his sanity. When he expressed a desire for Hiraku's statue, Hiraku hesitated to part with it. Seeing Vargreif's disappointment, Hiraku offered to carve him another statue instead. Grateful for the gesture, Vargreif was deeply touched and took the statue back with him, secretly donating it to the temple of the god of creation. The priests at the temple were so impressed with the accuracy of the statue that they declared the Great Tree Village under the protection of the god of creation. To celebrate Rue's pregnancy, Vargreif sent the village a grand piano as a gift. Rue enjoyed playing the piano, though they decided to place it in the dormitory. The trio of demon noble girls, who had taken a liking to music, were eager to play the piano but were too nervous to try it out. To help them overcome their nerves, Hiraku bought a cheaper piano for them to practice on first. However, he soon regretted his decision, as their late-night practice kept him from getting a good night's sleep. As Rue's pregnancy continued, spring passed and the summer arrived. Hiraku frequently checked on Rue, but she reassured him that she was fine, thanks to the excellent care she received from everyone in the village. However, she did express sadness about not being able to drink alcohol during her pregnancy. In solidarity, all the women in the village decided to give up alcohol until the baby was born. When they asked Hiraku to sell their stock, he suggested instead that they allow the wine to continue aging, so it would taste even better when they could finally enjoy it again. This decision, however, led to some confusion among the dwarves, who were worried that the girls no longer liked their alcohol. Hiraku quickly cleared up the misunderstanding, and the dwarves were relieved and happy again. A few days later, Hiraku continued to keep an eye on Rue and discovered that Tia and the angels had gifted her a beautiful ice flower to help cool her down. One day, a dark elf appeared, bringing Rue another thoughtful gift. Over time, more villagers brought her gifts, eager to show their care and support, though they ended up overwhelming her with their generosity. One evening, Rue suddenly felt dizzy. The entire village sprang into action, preparing for the birth. Hiraku, however, was banished from the house during this uneasy time and wandered the farm, trying to keep his mind occupied. He visited his favorite spot in the village, where he eventually fell asleep under a tree. The next morning, he rushed back to Rue's side and was overjoyed to learn that she had given birth to their son, a healthy half-vampire boy. Hiraku was allowed to hold his son in his arms, overwhelmed with happiness at becoming a father for the first time. A week passed, and they decided to name their son Alfred. As Hiraku looked at his plants, he reminisced about the journey that had brought him to this point, recalling all the happy memories he had made with his friends since starting his second life. Feeling grateful for the support of the villagers, Hiraku wanted to give something back. Realizing that the village's current system of trading goods was no longer sustainable, Hiraku decided to create their currency, forging great tree coins. He distributed 3 coins to every villager, though there was some initial confusion about what one coin was worth. Soon, the villagers began exchanging coins for goods, enjoying the novelty of buying things with their currency. Many villagers made special requests, and Hiraku happily crafted toys and other items for them. A few days later, a little girl approached Hiraku, asking if she could use her coin to buy a baby. Hiraku gently refused, but offered to play with her and the other children instead. To celebrate Alfred's birth, the village held a grand feast. The girls were particularly excited, as they could finally drink alcohol again. Flora, in high spirits, celebrated her new nephew, Alfred. Hiraku noticed Rue holding a hammer, just as Donovan arrived with a huge cask of wine. The dwarves had produced an exclusive wine to congratulate Hiraku and Rue on their baby, and together, they opened the barrel, kicking off the celebration. Everyone drank and danced, enjoying the party. Hiraku and Rue were thrilled to celebrate with their friends and family. Despite the festive atmosphere, Rue refrained from drinking, as she was still breastfeeding Alfred. The dwarves, understanding her situation, decided to produce a special celebratory wine that would be saved until Alfred was old enough to drink. Meanwhile, the drunk Flora says that Alfred is the best nephew in the world. At the demon place, Beazle finally declares the Great Tree Village to be too powerful to ever defeat and plans to become allies instead. Galgardo throws a tantrum, mistakenly thinking Beazle wants to arrange a political marriage between Yuri and Hiraku. In the end, Hiraku receives requests from almost 200 people wishing to move to the village to escape wars or persecution, leading to a decision to build an entire second village nearby to house them all, Great Tree Village 2.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this. If you have any suggestions or questions, feel free to leave a comment below. Until next time, take care.